Welcome back. I'm Mike Young from Athletic Lab. In this next segment, we're going to talk about programming considerations that you need to take into account when designing speed and agility sessions for your athletes. When I'm training change of direction and agility in my team sport athletes, I've got a couple key considerations that I'm always taking into account. The first one is that I want this training to be as game-like as possible. So I'm going to try to combine multiple activities into one. I'm going to include linear speed, changes of direction, and jumping activities all into one. Generally, I'll start with very remedial activities, very controlled activities where it's highly predictable. Progress to ones that are much more unpredictable, incorporating many more movement patterns. If I can, I'll start to incorporate reaction, cognitive ability, and increased variability into the training plan to more closely mimic what the athlete might see on the field of play. Another thing that I always want to keep in mind is a focus on linear speed. At no point in time do I ever want to take the emphasis off of linear speed. Research evidence suggests that linear speed is what determines the outcomes of matches, regardless of whether your sport is basketball, soccer, or rugby. Sport after sport, game after game, it doesn't matter. Linear speed is important. So while we always want to focus on change of direction in our team sport athletes, we never want to lose sight of the fact that one does not come apart or separate from change of direction abilities, and two, linear speed is ultimately what decides the outcomes of many games. So if we can ever include linear speed into our change of direction training, we want to do it. Another factor, which I always have in mind when I'm addressing change of direction abilities in my athlete, is intensity. Intensity is absolutely critical. We want to make sure that the athlete is giving 100% effort at all points in time. We want them to maximize their intent while minimizing the amount of fatigue. Change of direction and agility training is best performed when the athlete is relatively fresh, without undue fatigue. This focus on intensity is going to dictate both the duration that the athlete can work, as well as how much rest they need to take to keep that maximum intent high. With regards to intensity, again, we want them to be going at 100% at all points in time. That's how we'll really challenge the motor program. Change of direction, just as with linear speed, is a highly challenging neuromuscular activity, and we need to redline the system with full intensity, maximal intent activities. That's going to mean that the duration of work has to be no greater than 10 seconds if we're really trying to focus on our ability to change direction. It's also going to mean that we need to allow sufficient amount of rest and recovery between repetitions so that the athlete is fresh enough to bring all the intensity that they have. Again, they need to redline the system on every single repetition. Typically, I'm expecting athletes to have about a 1:30 ratio in terms of their work to rest ratio. That means if the work bout was 1 second, that they should be resting about 30 seconds. If it's 2 seconds, they rest as much as a minute. Hybrid-based athletes that are very aerobically fit, like soccer players and rugby players and field hockey players, may be able to go slightly shorter, but we really don't want to cut that too short because we'll compromise the intensity of the activity. Thanks for watching this segment. Stay tuned for our next one on progressing agility and change of direction training for athletes, where we'll look at how we can progress from remedial to more advanced activities that will work really well for training your athletes over their long-term athletic development and annual plan.